Hello, welcome to part 1 of the Next Gen Guide to English Grammar. In this lesson, we look at the main ideas behind simple sentences and the main parts that they're made up of. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to break a simple sentence down into its main component parts and describe what those parts do. So for example, we should be able to look at the sentence, Tony loves pineapple pizza, and describe the function of each part. In general, sentences should always have two things, a subject and a verb. Now, it's very common for the subject to come before the verb. However, it's usually easier to explain what they are and their relationship by explaining the verb first. Verbs can be actions, for example, the word walk. Or they can be states, for example, the word love is a verb, as is the word believe. They're not things that involve any physical act or movement, but they are thoughts or feelings or emotions that a person can have. But if I just put a verb into a sentence, then we have a problem, because actions and states don't exist on their own. They need to be done or thought or felt by someone or something. So for example, I can't say or write, saw you yesterday. Doesn't make sense. Who or what saw the person yesterday? So we need a subject. And from what I've just explained, it should be clear that the subject of a sentence is the person, group, or thing that does the action or has the state. So now that we know what a subject is, we can add one to our sentence. I saw you yesterday. And now we have a subject and a verb, making a correct sentence. The subject is I, and the verb is saw. So in general, without hunting for exceptions, as there are almost always exceptions to just about every grammar rule in English, simple sentences need a subject and a verb. Let's go through some example sentences now. See if you can identify the subject and the verb in each sentence. Sentence number 1 is, I read for fun. So first, we look for the verb in the sentence, and it should be immediately clear that it's read. Then we simply look for who's doing the reading, and of course it's I. So the verb is read, and the subject is I. Sentence number 2, I don't like bad smells. In this sentence, we don't have an action, but we do have a state, which is to like, or in this case, to not like. So that's our verb, and again, not liking is done by I, so that's our subject again. So for sentence number 2, the subject is I, and the verb is like. Sentence number 3, you're my best friend. Okay, so the verb here might not be so obvious. Is there an action? Well, no. So there must be a state, right? Of course. The state here is actually just being something. In this case, being my best friend. The verb in this sentence is are, which is another form of to be. And who is my best friend? Well, you are. So the subject here is you. The subject is you, and the verb is are. Sentence number 4, sometimes we just want cake. Okay, so I'm just putting this sentence in to try and get away from the idea that the subject is always the first word in a sentence. And the verb is always the next one, because that's not the case. It's definitely not the case when we move away from simple sentences, like when we use the passive tense or complex sentences, for example. In this sentence, the verb is stative, and it's want. Who wants? We do. The subject is we, and the verb is want. Again, the main idea here is that the action or state in a sentence is the verb, and the one or group or thing that does the action or has the state is the subject. The verbs that we've looked at so far are main verbs. They can be divided into three groups: transitive, intransitive, and those that can be both. Now, we've just introduced two completely new terms here, so we need to explain them. To do this, have a look at this sentence. Yesterday, I found. This sentence has a subject, I, and it has a verb, found. This subject and verb can and do go together. So is it okay then? Is it correct? Of course, we're missing some information here. What did the person find? We can't simply stop the sentence here like we can with yesterday I studied. It doesn't make sense. The problem here is that found is a transitive verb. A transitive verb must take an object. Without an object, the sentence doesn't make sense. Okay, so now we know that we need an object. And what is an object? We know what a subject is. We know what a verb is. But what's an object? Well, if we look at our sentence, it should be clear what an object is. An object is what the action or state is done to. So for example, here the verb is found. Who found? I found. So the subject is I. What did I find? Well, that would be our object. So if we update the sentence now to I found £5, then the action of finding is done to the £5. So the object here is £5. Again, when we have a transitive verb, such as found, we must have an object. An object is the part of the sentence that the verb is done to. Here are some more sentences with transitive verbs. I took the bus. They buy expensive clothes. We brought our lunch with us. So here, the objects of these sentences are the bus, expensive clothes, and our lunch. What did I take? I took the bus. What did they buy? They buy expensive clothes. What did we bring? We brought our lunch. What about intransitive verbs? Well, as the name suggests, they don't take an object. For example, I smile. You laugh. We sleep. We're unable to add an object, even if we add more information to the sentence, such as, I smile when I see you. You laugh too much. We sleep at 9 o'clock. We still don't have any objects because the verbs are not done to anything. I don't smile my mouth. I don't laugh my voice or sleep my body. So transitive verbs must take an object, and intransitive verbs don't take an object. There are some verbs that can be transitive or intransitive, depending on the sentence, such as started, as in, you started the car for transitive, and the video started for intransitive. Right, so now that we've looked at subjects, verbs, transitive verbs, intransitive verbs, and objects, we can go back to our first example sentence and we should be able to complete our lesson objectives. Tony loves pineapple pizza. See if you can answer the following questions. What is the verb in this sentence? The verb is loves. What is the subject of the sentence? Well, of course, the subject is Tony. Is the verb transitive or intransitive? This is a transitive verb. If it's transitive, what's the object? The object is pineapple pizza. See if you can answer the same questions for the following sentences. I use my computer every day. The game ended in a draw. I absolutely love this course. Okay, so the verb here might not be so obvious. Is there an action? Well, no. So there must be a verb, right?